The morning sun cast long shadows across the broken streets of New Chicago. Danny Martinez crept through the rubble, his small frame moving silently between chunks of concrete and twisted metal. The 12-year-old boy had learned to be quiet. Over the past 3 months, making noise meant attracting attention. Attention meant trouble with the aliens. He squeezed through a gap in a collapsed wall, entering what used to be Peterson's pharmacy. The smell of dust and decay filled his nose. Broken glass crunched under his worn sneakers as he made his way to the back room. His heart pounded as he searched through the scattered medicine bottles. Most were empty or broken, but Danny's fingers found what he was looking for. 3 small bottles of antibiotics sat hidden behind a fallen shelf. Danny's eyes lit up as he carefully placed them in his jacket pocket. His grandmother, Helen, had been sick for 2 weeks now. The infection in her leg was getting worse every day. Without these medicines, she might die. Danny heard footsteps outside. Heavy boots on broken concrete. He froze, holding his breath. The footsteps passed by, but Danny waited 5 more minutes before moving. The aliens had patrols everywhere, called themselves the Zephyrian Empire, and they had conquered Earth. In just 3 days, the boy remembered that terrible time. The sky had filled with massive ships that blocked out the sun. The aliens had weapons that could destroy entire city blocks in seconds. Earth's armies had tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. The aliens were too strong, too advanced. Surrender came quickly. Danny made his way back through the ruins toward home. Home was now a small apartment in what the aliens called Sector 7 before the invasion. This had been a nice neighborhood with tree-lined streets and clean sidewalks. Now, it looked like a war zone. Most buildings were damaged or destroyed. The few that still stood were overcrowded with families who had lost their homes. He passed other humans on the street. They walked with their heads down, avoiding eye contact. Everyone had learned to be invisible. The aliens didn't like humans who stood out or caused trouble. People who broke the rules simply disappeared. Danny reached his building and climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The elevator hadn't worked since the invasion. Neither had the electricity, except for a few hours each day when the aliens allowed. He opened the door to find his sister Lisa waiting for him. Lisa Martinez was 19 years old, but she looked older now. The stress of the past 3 months had aged her face. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her clothes were the same ones she had worn for days. Washing machines didn't work without steady power. "Where have you been?" Lisa asked, keeping her voice low. Even inside their apartment, it was dangerous to speak too loudly. "I found medicine for Grandma," Danny whispered, pulling out the bottles. "Real antibiotics." Lisa's eyes widened. Medicine was hard to find now. The aliens controlled all the hospitals and pharmacies. They gave out basic supplies to humans, but only enough to keep them alive and working. Anything more was considered luxury. "Danny, you know how dangerous this is?" Lisa said. "If they catch you with stolen medicine, ... "It's not stolen," Danny replied. "The pharmacy was already destroyed. Nobody owns it anymore." Lisa wanted to argue, but she knew her brother was right. The old rules didn't apply anymore. The aliens had their own laws now, and those laws were simple. Humans were property. They could work, but they couldn't own anything. They could live, but they couldn't choose where. They could speak, but they couldn't complain. From the bedroom came a weak cough. Grandmother Helen was getting worse. The old woman had been strong before the invasion. She had worked as a nurse for 40 years and had raised Lisa and Danny after. Their parents died in a car accident. As she lay in bed, too weak to stand, Danny rushed to her side. Elaine's face was pale and sweaty. The infection in her leg had spread, creating red lines that crawled up toward her knee. Without treatment, she would die within days. "I brought you medicine, Grandma," Danny said softly. Helen's eyes opened slowly. She tried to smile, but didn't. "Have the strength. You're a good boy, Danny, but you need to be careful. The aliens are getting stricter every day." She was right. Commander Vextel, the alien leader of their sector, had been making new rules every week. Humans now had to report to the main plaza every morning for roll call. They had to wear identification tags at all times. They couldn't travel between sectors without permission. Breaking any rule meant punishment. The aliens themselves were terrifying to look at. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with bodies covered in hard, shell-like skin. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their faces looked like a cross between an insect and a lizard. Their eyes were large and black, showing no emotion when they looked at humans. But it wasn't just their appearance that made them scary. It was their attitude. They treated humans like animals or insects. They didn't see humans as intelligent beings with feelings and families. To them, humans were just resources to be managed and controlled. Danny had heard adults talking about the time before the invasion. They spoke of freedom, of being able to go anywhere they wanted, of choosing their own jobs and lives. To Danny, this sounded like a fairy tale. He had spent a quarter of his life under alien rule. This was the only world he really knew. Lisa gave their grandmother one of the antibiotic pills with a cup of water. The old woman swallowed it with difficulty, then lay back down. Her breathing was shallow and labored. "We need to get her to a real doctor," Lisa said. "The aliens won't allow it," Danny replied. "They only treat humans who work in the factories or farms. Grandma is too old to work." This was the cruel reality of their new world. The aliens only cared about humans who could be useful to them. Children, elderly people, and anyone who couldn't work were seen as a waste. They received the minimum food and medical care needed to keep them alive, nothing more. Lisa looked out the window at the street below. Alien soldiers patrolled in groups of 3, their heavy weapons visible to anyone who might think about causing trouble. Their boots made loud clicking sounds on the pavement as they walked. The sound had become the soundtrack of human life under occupation. "Tomorrow is roll call," Lisa said. "We all have to be there." Roll call happened every few days. All humans in the sector had to gather in the main plaza, while the aliens checked their identification tags and searched for contraband. Anyone caught with forbidden items faced immediate punishment. The aliens had a simple justice system. First offense meant a beating. Second offense meant death. Danny touched the medicine bottles in his pocket. If the aliens found them during roll call, he would be in serious trouble, but he couldn't throw them away. His grandmother needed them to live. "I'll hide them here," Danny said. "Take them after roll call." "No," Lisa said firmly. "If they search the apartment and find them, we'll all be punished. You have to get rid of them." Danny's face showed his frustration. He had risked his life to find these medicines. His grandmother was dying without them, but Lisa was right. The aliens had searched apartments before. They didn't need warrants or reasons. They could search any human home at any time. The boy looked at his grandmother's pale face. She had sacrificed everything to raise him and Lisa. She had worked extra jobs to pay for their school clothes and books. She had stayed up all night when they were sick, holding them until their fevers broke. Now she was dying, and the medicine that could save her was too dangerous to keep. Outside, the alien patrol passed by their window. Their clicking footsteps faded into the distance, but Danny knew they would be back. They were always back. The aliens never stopped watching, never stopped controlling every aspect of human life. Danny made his decision. He would keep the medicine. He would find a way to hide it during roll call. His grandmother had never given up on him, and he wouldn't give up on her, even if it meant risking everything. The morning alarm echoed across Sector 7 at exactly 6 o'clock. Danny woke up with a start, his hand immediately going to his jacket pocket where the medicine bottles were hidden. He had barely slept, worried about the roll call that was scheduled. For today, Lisa was already awake, sitting by their grandmother's bedside. Helen looked worse than yesterday. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin had a gray color that scared Danny. The infection was spreading faster now. Without the antibiotics, she might not survive another day. "How is she?" Danny whispered. "Not good," Lisa replied, her voice heavy with worry. "The fever got worse during the night." Danny felt the weight of the medicine bottles in his pocket. Each bottle could help save his grandmother's life, but carrying them to roll call was incredibly dangerous. He had thought about hiding them in the apartment, but Lisa was right. The aliens searched homes randomly. If they found the medicine, the whole family would be punished. "Maybe I should stay home," Danny said. "Tell them I'm sick." "No," Lisa said firmly. "Missing roll call is worse than being caught with contraband. I'll come looking for you, and then they'll search everything." Danny knew she was right. The aliens had strict rules about attendance. Everyone had to be present unless they were dying. Even then, they needed permission from the alien authorities. The boy had no choice but to go to roll call with the medicine. Hidden on him, they helped their grandmother take another antibiotic pill before leaving. Helen squeezed Danny's hand weakly. "Be careful, my boy," she whispered. "Don't do anything brave or stupid." Danny nodded, but he had already made his choice. He would risk everything to save the woman who had raised him. The streets were filled with people walking toward Central Plaza. Hundreds of humans moved in the same direction, their faces showing the same mixture of fear and resignation. Children held their parents' hands tightly. Old people walked slowly, struggling to keep up. Everyone wore their identification tags on chains around their necks. Danny walked between Lisa and their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. The old woman had lost her husband during the invasion. Now she lived alone in a tiny apartment, surviving on the basic food rations the aliens provided. "Another beautiful day in paradise," Mrs. Patterson said sarcastically. Before the invasion, she had been a school teacher. She worked in the alien food processing plant, sorting vegetables for 12 hours a day. "Quiet," Lisa warned. "You never know who might be listening." This was true. Some humans had become informants for the aliens. They reported on their neighbors in exchange for extra food or better living conditions. Trust was a luxury that few people could afford anymore. The group reached Central Plaza, where hundreds of people were already gathered. The plaza had once been a beautiful park with trees and flowers. Now it was a concrete square surrounded by alien guard towers. Armed soldiers stood at every corner, their weapons ready. Danny looked around at the crowd. He saw familiar faces from his neighborhood, but also strangers from other parts of the sector. There were families with small children, groups of teenagers, and elderly people who could barely stand. All of them were trapped in the same nightmare. At the front of the plaza stood a raised platform where the alien officers conducted roll call. Commander Vextel was there, his massive form towering over the human crowd. His forearms were crossed, and his black eyes scanned the gathering with cold indifference. Next to him stood Lieutenant Krasmer, his second in command. Krasmer was slightly smaller than Vextel, but no less frightening. His shell-like skin had battle scars from the invasion, and his face showed constant anger. Danny had heard that Krasmer hated human children most of all. Some people said he had lost his own offspring during the war and blamed all humans for his loss. "Attention, humans." Vextel's voice boomed across the plaza. The aliens spoke English, but with a harsh accent that made every word sound like a threat. "Today, we will conduct standard identification and contraband inspection. Anyone found with forbidden items will face immediate punishment." Danny's heart began to race. His hand moved instinctively toward his pocket, then stopped. He couldn't let anyone see him touching the hidden medicine. He forced himself to stand still and look straight ahead. The inspection began with the front rows. Alien soldiers moved through the crowd, checking identification tags and patting down random people. They worked systematically, their forehands, making the searches quick and thorough. Danny watched as they searched an old man in the third row. The soldiers found nothing, but they still pushed him roughly to the ground. The man struggled to get back up, his joints stiff with arthritis. No one helped him. Everyone had learned that showing sympathy for others could make you a target row by row. The soldiers moved closer to where Danny stood. His palms were sweating now, and he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. The medicine bottles seemed to grow heavier in his pocket with each passing minute. A woman in the row ahead of him started to cry. She was holding a baby who wouldn't stop fussing. The alien soldier searching her became annoyed by the noise. "Silence the offspring," the soldier commanded. The woman tried to quiet her baby, but infants don't understand commands. The crying continued, getting louder as the baby sensed its mother's fear. "I said silence it," the soldier repeated, raising his weapon. "Please," the woman begged. "He's just hungry. You can make him quiet." The soldier lowered his weapon but grabbed the woman's arm roughly. "Next time, control your offspring or leave it at home." Danny felt sick watching this scene. The aliens treated human children like annoying pets. They didn't understand the babies cry because it's natural. It's not because they're being disobedient. Finally, the soldiers reached Danny's row. Lieutenant Krasmer himself was leading this group, his black eyes fixed on Danny immediately. The boy tried to look calm, but he could feel his hands shaking. "You," Krasmer said, pointing one of his forearms at Danny. "Step forward." Danny's legs felt like water, but he forced himself to move. He stepped out of the line and stood before the alien lieutenant. Up close, Krasmer was even more terrifying. His breath smelled like rotting meat, and his eyes showed nothing but hatred. "Identity tag," Krasmer demanded. Danny lifted the chain around his neck, showing his identification tag. Krasmer examined it carefully, comparing the information to a list he carried. Daniel Martinez, age 12, Sector 7, Block C, Apartment 3B. Krasmer read aloud. "Unemployed dependent." "Yes, sir," Danny said quietly. "You seem nervous, young human," Krasmer observed. "Are you hiding something?" "No, sir," Danny replied, but his voice cracked slightly. Krasmer's eyes narrowed. With humans, he had learned to read their body language. This boy was definitely hiding something. "Raise your arms," Krasmer commanded. Danny slowly raised his arms above his head. Krasmer began to search him, his four hands moving quickly over Danny's body. The alien checked his pants pockets first, then moved to his jacket. Danny held his breath as Krasmer's hand approached the pocket with the medicine bottles. Time seemed to slow down. He could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears. The crowd around him faded away. Everything depended on the next few seconds. Krasmer's hand found the bottles. The alien lieutenant's face changed immediately. His eyes widened with surprise, then narrowed with anger. He pulled out the 3 bottles of antibiotics and held them up for everyone to see. "Contraband," Krasmer announced loudly. "Stolen medical supplies." A murmur went through the crowd. People stepped back, not wanting to be associated with Danny's crime. Lisa tried to move forward, but Mrs. Patterson held her back. "Please," Danny said desperately. "My grandmother is dying. She needs medicine." "Silence," Krasmer roared. "You dare to steal from the Empire? You dare to break our laws?" "I didn't steal anything," Danny protested. "The pharmacy was already destroyed. Nobody owned those medicines. This was exactly the wrong thing to say." Krasmer's anger exploded into rage. To him, Danny's words sounded like defiance. The boy was not just a thief, but a rebellious thief who refused to accept his crime. "Everything belongs to the Empire," Krasmer shouted. "Every building, every object, every human. You have no right to take anything without permission." Alien Lieutenant looked around at the crowd. Hundreds of human faces stared back at him, some showing fear, others showing sympathy for the boy. This was exactly what Krasmer had been waiting for. A chance to make an example that would remind these humans of their place in the new order. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," Krasmer announced. "This is what happens to thieves. This is what happens to humans who forget their place." Danny saw the blow coming, but couldn't move fast enough to avoid it. Krasmer's armored fist struck him in the side of the head with tremendous force. The alien's enhanced strength, combined with the metal armor covering his hand, made the impact devastating. The sound of the blow echoed across the plaza like a gunshot. Danny's skull shattered instantly. His small body flew through the air and hit the concrete hard. Blood began to pool around his head as he lay motionless on the ground. The entire plaza fell silent. 300 humans stood frozen in shock, staring at the broken body of a 12-year-old boy. Some people started crying quietly. Others looked away, unable to watch. A few, like Lisa, stood perfectly still with expressions of pure horror on their faces. Lisa sat beside Danny's grave for 3 hours after the burial. The small cemetery behind Sector 7 had grown much larger since the invasion. New graves appeared every week as people died from sickness, starvation, or alien punishment. Grave was marked with a simple wooden cross that Mrs. Patterson had made from scrap lumber. The funeral had been quick and quiet. Only a few neighbors had attended. Large gatherings made the aliens suspicious, so people had learned to mourn in silence. Lisa had spoken a few words about her brother, but mostly she had just stood there, staring at the small wooden box that held his body. Now she was alone with her thoughts. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cemetery. Soon it would be dark, and the alien patrols would begin their night rounds. Lisa knew she should go home to check on her grandmother. But she couldn't make herself leave yet. Something had changed inside her when she watched Danny die. The fear that had controlled her life for 3 months was gone. In its place was something else, something cold and hard that she had never felt before. It wasn't just anger, though anger was part of it. It was deeper than that. It was a complete rejection of the world the aliens had created. "He was just a boy," a voice said behind her. Lisa turned to see Jake Sullivan standing a few feet away. Jake was 25 years old and had been a Marine before the invasion. He was tall and muscular, with short brown hair and serious eyes. Like many former soldiers, he had tried to organize resistance during the first weeks of occupation. But the aliens had been too strong, and most resistance fighters had been killed or captured. "He was trying to save our grandmother," Lisa said quietly. "The medicine wasn't even for him." Jake nodded. He had heard about what happened at roll call. The story had spread quickly through the human community. Everyone was talking about the 12-year-old boy who had died trying to help his family. "A lot of people are angry about this," Jake said. "More angry than I've seen since the invasion." "Anger doesn't bring him back," Lisa replied. "Oh, but it might prevent other kids from dying the same way." Lisa looked at Jake carefully. There was something in his voice that suggested he wasn't just making conversation. "What do you mean?" Jake sat down on the ground next to her. He looked around to make sure they were alone, then spoke in a low voice. "There are people organizing again. People who think it's time to fight back. The resistance was crushed months ago," Lisa said. "Anyone who tried to fight was killed. Some of us survived," Jake said. "We've been laying low, waiting for the right moment." What happened to Danny might be that moment. Lisa felt something stir inside her chest. For months, she had focused only on survival. Keep your head down, follow the rules, don't make trouble. It had seemed like the only way to protect her family, but following the rules hadn't saved Danny. Being obedient hadn't stopped the aliens. From murdering a child in front of hundreds of people? "What kind of organizing?" Lisa asked. Jake looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding whether he could trust her. Small groups, people with useful skills, former military, police officers, engineers, doctors. "We're not trying to fight the aliens head-on like before. We're thinking smaller, sabotage, hit-and-run attacks. Make their lives difficult." "That sounds like suicide," Lisa said. "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But living like this is just slow suicide. At least fighting back gives us a chance to die with dignity." Lisa thought about Danny lying on the concrete, his blood spreading across the plaza. There had been no dignity in his death. He had died begging for mercy that never came, killed for the crime of loving his grandmother. Who else is involved? Lisa asked Maria Gonzalez, for one. She used to be an engineer before the invasion. She knows how their power systems work. There's also Pete Johnson. He was a police detective. Nancy Clark. She was a doctor. Lisa knew all these names. They were people from her neighborhood who had lost family members to alien brutality. Maria's husband had been executed for trying to organize a work strike. Pete's daughter had died when the aliens refused to provide medical care for her diabetes. Nancy's son had been killed trying to defend their home during the initial invasion. "What would you want from me?" Lisa asked. "You know this sector better than anyone," Jake said. "You and Danny spent months scavenging through every building. You know which routes the patrols take, where they keep their supplies, what their schedules are. That kind of information is valuable." Lisa realized he was right. During their scavenging trips, she and Danny had learned to avoid alien patrols by memorizing their patterns. They knew which buildings were watched and which were ignored. They had discovered hidden passages through the ruins that the aliens didn't know about. "When do you meet?" Lisa asked. "Tomorrow night. Basement of the old Murphy building on 5th Street. Can you find it?" Lisa nodded. The Murphy building had been an office complex before the invasion. Now it was a gutted shell, but she knew how. To get inside through the parking garage. 8 o'clock, Jake said. "Come alone, and make sure you're not followed." After Jake left, Lisa sat in the cemetery for another hour. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Before the invasion, light pollution from the city had hidden most of the stars. Now, with power strictly rationed, the night Sky was clearer than it had been in decades. Lisa thought about her grandmother, lying sick at home. Helen was dying slowly without proper medical care. The antibiotics Danny had found might have saved her, but now they were gone, probably destroyed by the aliens. Even if Lisa could find more medicine, she would face the same dangers Danny had faced. The old Lisa would have accepted this fate. She would have watched her grandmother die and told herself there was nothing she could do. But something fundamental had changed when she saw her brother's body hit the concrete. The part of her that accepted alien rule had died with Danny. She walked home through empty streets. The alien patrols were out, their clicking footsteps echoing between the buildings. Lisa hid in doorways and alleys, moving carefully to avoid detection. But for the first time in months, she wasn't hiding because she was afraid. She was hiding because she had work to do. The apartment was dark when she arrived. Her grandmother was asleep, her breathing shallow and labored. Lisa sat beside the bed and took Helen's hand. The old woman's skin was hot with fever. "I'm going to make them pay for what they did to Danny," Lisa whispered. "I promise you that." Helen's eyes opened slowly. Even in her weakened state, she seemed to understand what Lisa was thinking. "Don't do anything foolish, child," Helen said weakly. "I couldn't bear to lose you too. They're going to lose me anyway if I do nothing," Lisa replied. "The only question is whether I die fighting or die on my knees." Helen squeezed Lisa's hand with what little strength she had left. "Your brother would be proud of you," she said. "But be smart about it. Don't throw your life away." Lisa nodded. But she had already made up her mind. Tomorrow night, she would meet with Jake and the others. She would share everything she knew about alien patrol patterns and building layouts. She would help them plan attacks that would make the occupiers pay for their cruelty. The next evening, Lisa made her way to the Murphy building. She used a route that took her through 3 different buildings, entering through windows and climbing. Over rubble to avoid the streets. It took her 40 minutes to travel 6 blocks. But she was confident no one had followed her. The basement of the Murphy building was dark and smelled of mold. Lisa found the others waiting for her in a small room that had once been a storage closet. Jake was there, along with 4 other people she recognized from the neighborhood. Maria Gonzalez was a small woman in her 40s, with graying hair and intelligent eyes. She had worked for the city's power company before the invasion and understood electrical systems better than anyone. Pete Johnson was older, maybe 55, with a gray beard and the careful way of moving that came from years of police work. His daughter Sarah had been only 10 when she died, roughly Danny's age. Nancy Clark looked tired but determined. She had been a pediatric doctor before the invasion, specializing in treating sick children. Now she worked in the alien agricultural processing plant, sorting grain for 10 hours a day. The 4th person was someone Lisa didn't recognize. He was young, maybe 20, with dark skin and nervous eyes. "This is Carlos," Jake said. "Eh? He works in the Alien Communications Center. He's been passing information to us for weeks." Carlos nodded at Lisa, but didn't speak. She could see he was scared. Working inside alien facilities was extremely dangerous. If he was caught spying, the aliens wouldn't just kill him. It would make his death long and painful as an example to others. "We heard about your brother," Maria said gently. "We're sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Lisa replied. "But I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here to make sure no other children die like Danny did." Pete leaned forward. "Jake says you know the patrol patterns in this sector better than anyone." Lisa nodded. "Danny and I mapped them over months of scavenging. The aliens are creatures of habit. They follow the same routes at the same times every day." "What about their supply lines?" Nancy asked. "Where do they store food and equipment?" 6 weeks had passed since Danny's death, and the resistance had grown stronger than anyone expected. What started as 5 people meeting in a basement had become a network of over 50 fighters spread across New Chicago. Similar groups were forming in other cities as news of the movement spread through secret communication channels. Lisa crouched behind a pile of rubble, watching the alien supply convoy approach the warehouse on 10th Street. This was their biggest operation yet. And her heart was pounding with nervous energy. Beside her, Jake checked his improvised explosive device one more time. The bomb was made from cleaning chemicals and scrap metal that Maria had shown them how to combine. "Remember," Jake whispered, "we hit fast and hard, then disappear. No heroics, no standing around to admire our work." Lisa nodded. Over the past weeks, she had learned that successful resistance required discipline and patience. The aliens were individually stronger than humans, but they had weaknesses too. They relied heavily on their technology and seemed to have trouble adapting when things didn't go according to plan. The convoy consisted of 3 heavy transport vehicles escorted by 2 patrol units. Lisa had watched this same convoy 12 times over the past month, studying their procedures and timing. The aliens always followed the exact same routine. It would unload supplies for exactly 30 minutes, then move on to the next warehouse. Carlos had confirmed that today's shipment included communication equipment and medical supplies. Destroying it would force the aliens to request replacements from their orbital stations, disrupting their supply chain and communication. That worked for days. Lisa watched through binoculars as the convoy entered the warehouse compound. The alien soldiers established a security perimeter while the workers began unloading cargo containers. Everything was proceeding exactly as it had during her previous observations. "Positions," Jake whispered into his radio. Around the warehouse, 8 other resistance fighters moved into their assigned locations. Maria was positioned near the power substation that supplied electricity to the warehouse district. Pete and Nancy were covering the escape routes. Carlos had provided detailed building layouts that helped them plan multiple exit strategies. Lisa's job was to plant the explosive device on the main transport vehicle while the aliens were busy unloading. She'd volunteered for this dangerous task because she was the smallest member of the team and could move through tight spaces more easily than the others. She crawled forward through the rubble, staying low to avoid detection. The aliens had excellent vision, but they seemed to rely mainly on movement detection. As long as she moved slowly and stayed hidden behind cover, she should be able to reach the vehicle undetected. It took her 15 minutes to cross the 50 yards between her hiding spot and the transport vehicle. Her hands were shaking by the time she reached the target, but she forced herself to stay calm. Danny had been brave when he faced danger to help their grandmother. Now it was her turn to be brave. Lisa attached the explosive device to the underside of the vehicle, just as Maria had taught her. The magnetic clamps held it securely in place, and the timer was set for 10 minutes. That would give her time to escape before the explosion, but not enough time for the aliens to discover and disarm the bomb. She was crawling back toward her escape route when something went wrong. One of the alien guards spotted movement in the rubble pile where Jake was hiding. The creature raised an alarm, and suddenly the entire warehouse area was on high alert. "Move, move, move." Jake's voice crackled through her radio earpiece. Lisa abandoned stealth and ran for the nearest exit point. Behind her, she could hear alien soldiers shouting commands in their harsh language. Heavy footsteps crashed through the rubble as they pursued the retreating humans. She reached the drainage tunnel that would take her to safety. It stopped when she heard gunfire behind her. Pete Johnson was pinned down by alien soldiers near the warehouse entrance. His escape route had been cut off, and he was trapped behind a concrete barrier. The old Lisa would have kept running. Survival was more important than heroics. But 6 weeks of fighting had changed her perspective. Pete had a family, and he had risked his life to avenge his daughter's death. She couldn't abandon him now. Lisa pulled out the small pistol Jake had given her. It was an old police weapon that Pete had hidden after the invasion. The bullets couldn't penetrate alien armor, but they could distract the soldiers long enough for Pete to escape. She fired 3 shots at the nearest alien soldier, aiming for the joints between his armor plates. The bullets bounced off harmlessly, but the attack drew the soldier's attention away from Pete. "Run!" Lisa shouted to the former detective. Pete didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted toward his assigned escape route while Lisa provided covering fire. The alien soldiers turned their weapons toward her, and she barely dove into the drainage tunnel before their energy blasts scorched the concrete where she had been standing. She crawled through the tunnel as fast as she could, the sound of alien footsteps echoing behind her. The tunnel connected to the old subway system, which gave her access to a network of underground passages that the aliens hadn't fully mapped yet. 10 minutes later, Explosion lit up the warehouse district. The blast was larger than expected, suggesting that the transport vehicle had been carrying something volatile. Secondary explosions followed as stored supplies caught fire. Smoke billowed into the sky, visible from miles away. Lisa emerged from the subway tunnel 6 blocks away from the warehouse. Jake was waiting at the predetermined rally point, along with most of the other team members. Pete arrived a few minutes later, breathing hard but uninjured. "Everyone accounted for," Jake reported. "That was a good operation." Lisa felt a surge of satisfaction as she watched the smoke rising from the warehouse district. They had struck a real blow against the alien occupation. But more importantly, they had proven that humans could fight back successfully. Over the following weeks, the Resistance launched more attacks. They sabotaged alien power systems, disrupted communication networks, and ambushed patrol units. Operation was carefully planned and executed with precision. The aliens began to realize they had a serious problem. Lisa specialized in hunting alien soldiers who had committed crimes against human civilians. She studied their patrol routes and personal habits, then struck when they were most vulnerable. Her first target was Sergeant Dekfar, who had executed a family for hiding food from the rationing authorities. She waited in an abandoned building that Dekfar passed every day on his way to duty. When the alien soldier entered the building to conduct his routine search, Lisa was ready. She had learned that aliens had a weak spot at the base of their necks, where their armor was thinnest. A single knife thrust ended Dekfar's life. Lisa left his body where other soldiers would find it, along with a note explaining why he had been killed. The message was simple: justice for the Martinez family. Word of these assassinations spread quickly through both the human and alien communities. Other resistance cells began targeting specific alien soldiers who had committed atrocities. The occupiers found themselves looking over their shoulders, never knowing when they might become targets. But Lisa's main goal remained unchanged. She wanted to find Lieutenant Krasmer, the alien who had killed Danny. She studied his movements obsessively, learning his schedule and identifying his vulnerabilities. Krasmer was more careful than the other soldiers. But everyone had weaknesses. She discovered that Krasmer visited a communication post in the industrial district every Tuesday morning. The building was heavily guarded, but Lisa found a way to access the upper floors through an adjacent structure. She could position herself with a clear shot at the communication post entrance. Lisa spent 3 weeks preparing for this operation. She practiced the shot hundreds of times using a sniper rifle that Carlos had stolen from an alien armory. The weapon was designed for alien physiology, but Maria had modified it to work with human hands. On the chosen Tuesday, Lisa was in position 2 hours before Krasmer was scheduled to arrive. Lay on the floor of a destroyed office building, the rifle barrel resting on a pile of debris that gave her a stable shooting platform. When Krasmer finally appeared, Lisa felt a cold satisfaction. The alien who had murdered her brother was walking into her crosshairs, completely unaware of the danger. She thought about Danny's face as he lay dying on the plaza concrete. "This is for my brother," she whispered and pulled the trigger. The shot was perfect. It struck Krasmer in the neck joint, exactly where his armor was weakest. The alien lieutenant fell immediately, his forearms twitching as his life ended. Lisa watched through her scope as other soldiers rushed to help him, but it was too late. She packed up her rifle and made her way to the escape route. The operation had taken less than 5 minutes from start to finish. By the time alien reinforcements arrived at the building, Lisa was already 2 miles away. That evening, the resistance leaders met to plan their next operations. The successful assassination of Krasmer had sent shockwaves through the alien command structure. Other lieutenants were requesting transfers to safer positions, and some patrol units were refusing to leave their fortified compounds. 3 months after the warehouse attack, Commander Vextel stood in his command center staring at reports that made no sense. 15 of his patrol units had been destroyed in the past week. 23 alien soldiers were dead, including 2 of his best lieutenants. Supply convoys were being attacked so frequently that he had to request armed escorts from the orbital fleet. The humans were supposed to be a broken people. They had surrendered quickly during the invasion, showing little resistance to occupation. Yet somehow, they had transformed into something far more dangerous than any enemy the Zephyrian Empire had faced before. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we have lost contact with the power station in Sector 12. The humans appear to have destroyed the main generator." Excel's 4 hands clenched into fists. The power station supplied electricity to 3 sectors of the city. Without it, his security systems would be compromised and his troops would have to rely on backup generators that weren't designed for long-term use. "Send a repair team immediately," he ordered. "Sir, our repair teams are requesting additional security. They refuse to work without full military escort." This was the problem that kept getting worse. Every alien on Earth was now afraid to leave. The fortified compounds, soldiers demanded extra weapons and armor for routine patrols. Engineers refused to work on infrastructure projects in areas where humans might be hiding. The entire occupation was grinding to a halt because his forces were too scared to do their jobs. Vextel had sent multiple reports to High Command, requesting additional troops and resources. The responses had been increasingly hostile. Zephyrian Empire controlled hundreds of worlds, and Earth was supposed to be a simple occupation mission. The fact that primitive humans were causing so much trouble was embarrassing to the entire command structure. The latest message from High Command has been clear: solve the human problem or face court-martial for incompetence. Vextel had 2 weeks to restore order, or he would be replaced by someone who could. "Sir," another officer interrupted his thoughts, "the human resistance is broadcasting on our emergency frequencies." Vextel turned to the communication console. The screen showed a young human female with dark hair and cold eyes. He recognized her immediately from security footage. This was Lisa Martinez, the sister of the boy that Lieutenant Krasmer had executed months ago. "Commander Vextel," Lisa's voice came through the speakers clearly. "My name is Lisa Martinez. You probably remember my brother Danny. Your lieutenant murdered him in front of 300 people for trying to save our grandmother." Vextel's black eyes narrowed. How had the humans gained access to military communication channels? Their technology was supposed to be centuries behind Zephyrian systems. "I want you to know," Lisa continued, "that Danny's death was the beginning of your end. Every attack, every dead soldier, every destroyed facility, it all started when you allowed that monster to kill a 12-year-old boy." The transmission showed images of destroyed alien installations across the city, supply depots reduced to smoking ruins, communication towers lying broken in the streets, bodies of alien soldiers who had been killed in ambushes. "You thought killing Danny would teach us to obey," Lisa said. "Instead, you taught us that we have nothing left to lose. You made the biggest mistake any conqueror can make. You gave us a reason to fight." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Vextel realized that the human girl was right about one thing. The execution of her brother had been a turning point. Before that moment, the humans had been passive and defeated. After it, they had become something else entirely. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we have intercepted communications suggesting a major resistance operation is planned for tonight. They appear to be targeting this facility." Vextel looked around his command center. The building was supposed to be the most secure location in the city, surrounded by defensive systems and guarded by his best troops. But after months of successful human attacks, he was no longer confident in his security. "Double the guard rotations," he ordered, "to activate all defensive systems. If the humans want to attack us here, we'll be ready for them." But as night fell, Vextel began to realize that he had underestimated the enemy once again. The attack didn't come from outside the building, it came from within. Carlos, the young human who had been working in the communication center for months, had been feeding information to the resistance all along. When the lights went out at exactly midnight, he was ready with detailed building layouts and security codes that he had stolen over weeks of careful observation. Lisa led a team of 20 resistance fighters through maintenance tunnels that connected to the command center's lower levels. Jake Sullivan commanded a second team that attacked the main entrance as a distraction. Maria Gonzalez had disabled the building's power grid from a remote location. Plunging the facility into darkness, the alien soldiers found themselves fighting in an environment they didn't understand against enemies who knew every corridor and hiding place. The humans moved through the building like ghosts, appearing to strike and then vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Lisa made her way to the upper floors where Vextel's command center was located. She carried the same modified alien rifle she had used to kill Krasmer, along with enough ammunition to fight her way through an army if necessary. She found Vextel in his private office, trying to coordinate the defense of his facility through a portable communication device. The alien commander was nearly 9 feet tall and covered in thick armor, but Lisa felt no fear as she entered the room. "Commander Vexel," she said calmly. The alien spun around, reaching for his weapon. Lisa was faster. Her first shot struck his upper right arm, spinning him around and causing him to drop his rifle. Her second shot hit his left leg, dropping him to his knees. Vextel looked up at the young human who had invaded his sanctuary. In her eyes, he saw something that terrified him more than any weapon. He saw absolute determination, the kind of resolve that couldn't be broken by force or intimidation. "You are the one called Lisa Martinez," he said, his voice showing pain from his wounds. "Damn," Lisa replied, keeping her rifle trained on him. "I'm the sister of the boy your lieutenant murdered. The boy whose only crime was trying to save his dying grandmother." "It was not my decision," Vextel said, trying to bargain for his life. "Krasmer acted without orders." "But you allowed it," Lisa said coldly. "You stood there and watched a child die, then told everyone to go home and remember what they had seen. You made Danny's death into a lesson about alien power." Vexel realized he was going to die. In all his years of military service, he had never imagined being defeated by a primitive species armed with inferior weapons. But the human girl standing before him wasn't primitive. She was something new, something the Zephyrian Empire had created through its own cruelty. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to understand something before you die," Lisa said. "You thought humans were weak because we surrendered quickly. Thought we'd stay broken because we followed your rules for a few months. But you were wrong about everything." She moved closer, her rifle still aimed at his head. "Humans don't break the way you think we do. When you hurt us, we don't become weaker. We become more dangerous. When you kill our children, we don't become afraid.
Ow.
We become unstoppable." Outside the office, the sounds of battle were growing quieter. The resistance fighters were winning, systematically clearing the building of alien defenders.
The command
Center that had once controlled the occupation of an entire city was falling to a group of humans, armed with improvised weapons and pure determination. "Your empire made a fundamental mistake," Lisa continued. "You assumed that because you could conquer us, you could control us. But conquering is easy compared to ruling. Ruling requires the consent of the governed, and you lost that consent. The moment you started murdering children," Vexel tried to speak, but Lisa wasn't finished. "Danny was trying to save his grandmother when your lieutenant killed him. He died because he loved someone more than he feared you. That's what you've never understood about humans. We love more than we fear. We hope more than we despair. We fight more than we surrender." The final shot echoed through the command center. Vextel fell forward, his life ending in the same building where he had planned the oppression of millions of humans. Lisa stood over his body for a moment, then spoke into her radio. "Command center secured. All alien resistance eliminated." Jake's voice crackled back through the static. "Outstanding work. Out. We have control of the entire facility." Within hours, news of the successful assault spread across the planet. Human resistance cells that had been fighting isolated battles suddenly realized they were part of a larger movement. Alien forces in other cities found themselves facing coordinated attacks from enemies who were no longer afraid. The Zephyrian High Command, watching from their orbital stations, made a decision that would have seemed impossible just months before. They ordered a complete withdrawal from Earth. The cost of maintaining the occupation had become too high, and the human resistance was spreading faster than it could be contained. 6 months after Danny Martinez died in Central Plaza, the last alien transport ship left Earth's atmosphere.